the previous section, we discussed about the contemporary challenges of human resource managers or human resource management department. So, because of these challenges, the role of human resource manager is also transforming or evolving. So, in the traditional context, the human resource manager had the following role of assessing and accomplishing the staff requirements, of providing training and development to the employees, and facilitating the journey of an employee from hiring to its exit. But due to the challenges that we learnt in the previous section, the following are the new roles of contemporary HR managers. So, today the HR manager is a strategic partner, is a change agent, is an employee well-being expert, and also an employee advocate. So, let us learn about these challenging new roles of the HR managers. So, HR as a strategic partner. So, it means that developing HR objectives aligned with the overall business objectives. So, as we discussed in the previous section also, the HR department is not any department which is working in isolation. It is working in sync with the strategies of the business or the strategies of the organization. So, motivating HR's involvement in formulation of business strategy is very important, and more important is that developing a mindset that focuses on strategic HRM rather than prior administrative approach. So, we discussed that previously the approach of human resource was more of administrative, looking into the hiring and firing of employees, giving them appointment letters, giving them training schedules. So, HR was limited to only these activities, but now the mindset is developing and the HR people are focusing on strategic human resource management. The next is HR as a change agent. So, we all know that HR operates in an environment, and environment we all know is dynamic, it is ever changing, it is never static. So, these changes that are occurring in the environment, both external and internal. So, the HR has to accept these changes and at times implement new programs, projects and procedures in the organization with respect to the changing environment. Then focusing on the process change through work simplification, value addition and re-engineering efforts. And apart from these two aspects that I discussed, it is very important for the HR to communicate the change related aspects to the employees in a very efficient and an effective manner. Because if the employees are not communicated timely, relevantly and sufficiently, they would not accept these changes. So, it is important for the HR to facilitate these change related communications effectively with the entire workforce. The next evolving role is that of HR as employee well-being expert. So, a lot of being talked about the well-being of employees, both the physical and mental well-being. So, it is the duty of the HR for transforming organizational culture into dynamic, health promoting venues and formulating policies that enhance the employee health and productivity, and also rewarding incentives to employees engaging in healthy practices. So, some of the strategies can be by rewarding or giving incentives to employees who undertake certain healthy practices in the organization. So, by implementing customized employee-centric health and wellness programs, then integrating HR functions with employee wellness and work and life quality initiatives. So, these are some of the strategies. So, next important role is of HR as employee advocate. So, by creating a work environment where employees are motivated, they are engaged and satisfied, so that they can achieve their personal goals as well as they can be retained in the organization. and providing employees with equal growth and development opportunities. So, be it demographic changes in the workforce or be the globalization. So, all people must have the equal growth and development opportunities, and also they should be treated fairly so that a relationship of trust ensues. So, it is very important for the HR manager to create an environment of trust, to create an environment of fair treatment, so that a good and amicable relationships can be developed between the workforce and between the employee and the employer. So, the next important aspect of human resource management that we are going to study today are the forces or the factors that affect human resource management. So, as I have already discussed this point, that human resource management in an organization is dependent on the environment, and it works according to the environment. And environment, we all know, is a dynamic environment. It is not static, it keeps on changing. And this environment can be of two types: the external environment as well as the internal environment. External environment means which is external to an organization, and internal is the intrinsic environment of an organization. So, similarly, there would be factors which could be external factors like the politico-legal scenario, the economic factors, the technological factors, and the cultural factors. So, these four are the external factors affecting human resource management. The second are the internal factors like the organizational strategy, the trade unions, and organizational culture. So, culture is both an external factor as well as internal factor, and I am going to explain how it is both an external and an internal factor. So, let us discuss each one of them. So, all these forces, as I said, have their bearing on the functioning of the HR department. So, by analyzing the environment, it is useful for the HR department in order to become proactive and not remain reactive. So, it is the need of the hour for HRs to become proactive and not just wait for an event to occur and then react to it. So, they must be proactive, they must anticipate changes in advance and strategize beforehand. So, that is called becoming proactive and not remain reactive. So, let us discuss the first aspect or the first factor. It is the political or political legal aspects. So, the impact of political institutions, we all know the judiciary or the executive, these have strong impacts on the working of an organization. So, the interface between political environment and labor takes place through an array of labor laws which are related to the terms and conditions of the employment, the working conditions, the payment of wages, and the industrial disputes. So, these legal aspects again have a strong impact on the policies and practices of human resource management. So, the role and impact of constitution, especially in a country like India, it is the genesis of all the acts and it is very crucial. So, here I would state, for example, Article 14, it guarantees equality. Article 15 prohibits discrimination on grounds of religion, race, caste, sex or place of birth. Similarly, Article 24, it prohibits employment of children in factories, mines and other hazardous jobs. So, all these articles govern how or who has to be employed. So, all these acts and laws act as guiding posts for functions of HR like recruitment, training, developing, remuneration and industrial relations. Now, we come to the second external factor, it is the economic factors. So, what are economic factors? Economic factors refer to all those factors or economic forces which have a bearing on the HR function. So, some of the components of economic factors are discussed like the economic growth, the suppliers of the workforce, the competitors, the customers and the labor. So, let us discuss them. So economic growth of a country affects the human resource management. So whether a country is economically developed or not affects the quality of labor, which depends on the education and health of its citizens. So we know that every country is not a developed country, and there would be a drastic difference in the workforce or human resources of a developed country and an underdeveloped country. A developed country would have a highly educated, highly skilled workforce, healthy workforce, whereas an underdeveloped country would not be having a very well educated or skilled workforces. So in a developed country, the efforts of the human resources to train or skill their employees would be less as compared to the efforts in an underdeveloped country. The next are the suppliers. Suppliers means those who provide the human resources to an organization. So who provides the human resources to an organization? It is the employment exchanges, the universities, the colleges, the training institutes, or the consulting firms. So if the universities and colleges are advanced and giving good courses, good skills to their students, so they are going to become a skilled workforce in future when they join an organization. Whereas if the education system or the universities and colleges are not skilling their students properly, so they need to be trained when they go to the organization, and they might not be contributing well or up to the mark to an organization when they work there. So the type of employees received depends on the suppliers. The next is the competition. So as the number of organizations competing for HR increases, the importance of the staffing function, its appraisal and compensation also increases. So if several companies offer a job to one individual, the organization with offering a better pay and better benefits will certainly win. So similarly, the customers also prove to be a very important economic factor. How? Well, we know that customers want high quality products and they want good services. So these can be attained with the help of trained and efficient people. And with the growth of service sector in Indian economy especially, there is more interaction of the customer and the employee. So we can serve our customers better only if we have good, trained, efficient employees. So more educated and aware customers pose a great threat to the organization. If the people are not well skilled or not very well trained to deal to the customers, it is going to be a threat for that organization. So next we discuss the technology. So the main use of technology in human resource management is an organization's human resource information system, that is the HRIS. That is, it is a computerized information package that provides management with increasing capacity to record, to store, to manipulate and communicate the information widely with access to many users. So the payroll system was the first to be computerized, and the payroll system was followed by the recruitment, the training, the performance evaluation, the promotions, the incentives, rewards and feedback systems. And today online screening, testing interviews, job portals have not only facilitated transactions but have also reduced the cost and the time. So technology is having a great impact on the human resource management. So technological changes have resulted in more collaborative teamwork. It has also led to flexible, dynamic organizational structures that facilitate change and adaptation. Then there has been relocation of work from office to homes. We all know that work from home is a new trend today. So it is only because of technology. So you can be in contact with any of your employees at any geographical location, and this work from home scenario is beneficial to both the organization as well as the employee. So next important factor affecting HRM is the culture. So here we talk of the culture of a country. So people's beliefs, their attitude, ethics and values constitute their culture, and a country's culture has impact on the HR practices. So as I already mentioned that no two countries have the same or similar culture. For example, if I give the example of the American versus the Japanese culture. So we know Americans are very pragmatic and practical approach. They are more of present oriented, whereas the Japanese culture, it is futuristic, it is future oriented, and also it is paternalistic in nature. They don't believe in hiring and firing, what Americans believe. So Japanese believe in nurturing their employees. Even if the employee is underperforming, they will behave like a father to a son or father to a daughter. So if our child doesn't perform well, we try to explain them, we try to nurture them. So this is the Japanese culture, which is futuristic as well as paternalistic. So their way of working and the way of working of Americans is totally different. So cultures have a great impact. In a country like India, the attitude towards work is very positive, because in our scriptures we consider our work as worship. Then there are ethical and unethical behaviors in countries. Then there is discrimination on the basis of gender, and this discrimination is considered to be ethical in some cultures, while some other countries talk of women empowerment. So there are the same concept has different connotations in different cultures. So certain countries have high power distant cultures, that is, that believe that there is nothing wrong with inequality and everyone has specific positions. And these organizations or the countries having such a culture, they value tradition, they value individualism and follow strict social rules about where a person fits in a society. So they do not talk of equality. They believe that inequality is okay. So organizations are characterized by taller organizational structures. They have indirect communication. You can't just go and talk to your boss or your supervisor in a direct manner. So these organizations have indirect communication, and they have a strict hierarchy, and there is indirect superior and subordinate relationship. So the superior subordinate relationship is not a direct or a informal kind of relationship. These organizations follow an indirect relationship between the superior and the subordinate. So these were the external factors that we discussed. Now coming on to the internal factors that impact the human resource management. So the first internal factor or the intrinsic factor within an organization is the organizational strategy. So human resource management cannot work on its own. It has to understand the strategy of its organization, the current strategy of its organization. So HRM issues are not independent issues but are derived from organization's strategy. Now what is strategy? Strategy is a way in which an organization uses its principal resources in response to the environment in pursuit of its objectives. So we must understand the objective of the organization, and HRM has to work according to those objectives. So HR is one of the principal resources. We can say the people of an organization are the principal resources of any organization. So it must be deployed and utilized, keeping in view of the requirements of the strategy of their organization. So its implication is that the HR strategy should be chalked out in light of the organization strategy. So it is not possible for the HR to decide something against the organizational strategy, right? It would be a disaster for any organization if the HR department does so. So for example, if an organization plans of growth or expansion strategy, it should start its hiring process after analyzing, of course, its people's inventory. Whereas if an organization is planning to lay off, can you think of recruiting people at that moment? No. So certainly the organizational strategy as well as the human resource strategy must be in sync with each other. So the second internal factor affecting human resource management is the trade unions. So trade unions is an association of workers or the management that is formed to protect their individual interests, and all activities related to the HR, namely the recruitment, the training, the compensation, the industrial relations, are carried out in consultation with the union leaders. Now the agreement between management and labor is reached through collective bargaining, and the outcome of these collective bargaining, it depends on the relative bargaining position of the management and the labor. So if the trade union, for example, is stronger and in a better bargaining position, so the outcome of such a bargaining would go in their favor. So trade unions are important factors that affect the human resource management. So next we come to the organizational culture. So earlier we talked of culture as an external factor, and here we talk of the organizational culture, which is an internal factor. So when I say culture as an external factor, we talk of the country's culture, that how a culture of one country is different from the culture of the other country. But when I talk of the organizational culture, we talk of the set of assumptions, the beliefs, the values and norms that are shared by an organization's members. So these organizations may be operating in the same country, yet they might have different organizational cultures. So why are cultures different and why do they vary from an organization to organization? It is because these cultures are a reflection of the founder's vision, their values and beliefs. So it is a product of all the organization's features, the people, their successes and their failures. For example, the late J.R.D. Tata's belief that get the best people and set them free shaped the culture of the Tata conglomerate. Effective HR practitioners identify the core beliefs or values of their organizations and strive to further those values. However, there would be differences in HRM practices in different types of organizational cultures. So here we are going to talk of two organizational cultures. The first is the high performing culture and the second is the low performing culture. So let us discuss the difference between the HR practices in a high performing culture and the low performing culture. So in a high performing culture, there is intricately linked to the strategic management, whereas in low performing culture, there is no such linkage. In a high performing culture, the people are strategic resources and people are considered to be important, whereas in a low performing culture, the people are treated like any other organizational resource. So no special treatment to people is given in a low performing culture. So in a high performing culture, the focus on growing new managers internally by promotion is taken care of, and in a low performing culture, there is no such focus. So when we say that growing new managers internally by promotion means we want to retain our own people instead of hiring them from outside. So we want to retain our best people. So this is a characteristic feature of a high performing culture. Then the training and development is very crucial, and the organizations having high performing culture lay great emphasis on the training and development of their people, whereas in low performing cultures there is not much crucial emphasis, or the training and development is not given much emphasis. So, the performance management is based on the person and not on the job in a high performing culture. So, here in the high performing cultures, we assess the person and not the job, whereas in a low performing culture, the emphasis or the performance management is based on the jobs rather than on the person. So, the HR department must scan the environment, both internal and external, for the opportunities and the threats that are present and act accordingly. So, in today's lecture, we discussed about the contemporary challenges that are being faced by the HR management, be it the globalization, be it the workforce diversity, the ethics, where we can say a lot of debate is going on, the ethical and unethical conduct of organizations and people due to certain pressures that are mounting. Then we also talked of technological advancements, be it the HR analytics or the artificial intelligence. So, all these contemporary challenges have led to the HR departments or HR managers to evolve their roles. So, they are becoming more of strategic partners for an organization. They are becoming employee advocates. They are considered to be well-being experts of the employees. They are also the change agents, because we know that gradual and sustainable changes are taking place in the environment. So, the organizations have to change them, change themselves, change the people, and these changes have to be communicated to their employees. So, that is where the HR department comes into play. So, they communicate, they explain these changes, the importance of these changes to their employees, so that they can also change, they can be skilled, they can be trained according to the environmental aspects. So, in the last we discussed about how different forces, how different factors, be it the internal factors or the external factors, have helped shape the HR departments. We discussed about the technology, we discussed about the economic factors, we discussed about certain internal factors like the organizational culture, we discussed about the ethics and all these important aspects. So, the HR department must scan both the internal and external environment, so that they can see the opportunities and threats that are present and they can strategize accordingly. Thank you.